This is not a procurement decision. It never was. The language of procurement, unit cost, delivery schedule, maintenance contract, interoperability specification is the surface through which this particular decision is being discussed. But the decision itself operates at a different level. It operates at the level of dependency, at the level of who controls the software that tells the aircraft what it is allowed to do, at the level of which country holds the update authority for the mission systems that determine what a pilot can see, what a pilot can target, and what a pilot can execute in the airspace above Canadian territory. That is not a procurement question. That is a sovereignty question. And the answer to it, whichever direction it goes, will not be reversible on a short timeline. The CF-18 replacement process has been running, in various forms, for longer than most political careers. The aircraft it is replacing entered service in the early 1980s. The delay itself is a document. It records, in the accumulated years of deferred decision, the structural difficulty Canada has always faced when its defense procurement intersects with American strategic preference. What Canada needs from an aircraft and what the United States prefers Canada to operate are not always the same requirement. The gap between those two things is where this decision actually lives. The F-35 is not simply an aircraft. This requires stating clearly because the procurement debate has consistently treated it as though the question were simply one of performance specifications, price per unit, and delivery timeline against a competing platform. The F-35 is a networked system. It is a node in an architecture that was designed from the beginning to be operated within a specific information environment controlled by the country that built it. The software that runs the mission systems, the update pipeline that modifies those systems as threats evolve, the data links that connect the aircraft to the broader network of American military sensing and targeting infrastructure, none of these are Canadian. None of them are under Canadian sovereign control. This is not a criticism of the aircraft's capabilities. It is a description of its architecture. And the architecture is the point. When a Canadian pilot is flying an F-35 over the Arctic, executing a mission that Canada has authorized, the systems informing that mission are operating under software that Canada did not write, cannot modify without American approval, and cannot update on a timeline that Canada controls. The mission envelope, what the aircraft can do, what it can target, what it can share with Canadian command systems, is defined by parameters set in Fort Worth and Washington. The alliance framing describes this as interoperability. The sovereignty framing describes it as dependency. Both descriptions are accurate. They are simply describing different dimensions of the same architecture. The Gripen offer presents a different architecture, not a superior aircraft in every performance dimension. The comparative analysis of platform capability is a genuine technical debate with legitimate arguments on multiple sides, but a different model of the relationship between the aircraft and the country that operates it. The technology transfer provisions that Saab has structured into its Canadian proposal are not incidental. They are the strategic content of the offer. The proposal to manufacture components and conduct final assembly in Canada, to transfer the source code for mission systems, to establish Canadian institutional capacity to modify and update those systems without foreign authorization. This is not a marketing feature. It is a different answer to the sovereignty question. 12,000 high-skilled manufacturing and engineering positions are also not incidental. They are the industrial policy dimension of a decision that the procurement framing consistently treats as purely military. A country that builds its own aircraft, or participates meaningfully in that construction, develops capabilities that persist beyond the production contract. Engineering knowledge, manufacturing process expertise, institutional capacity to maintain, modify, and eventually design the next generation of systems. Canada lost that capacity in 1959. The loss was not gradual. It was a decision made in a specific political moment that canceled the Avro Arrow and with it the industrial and engineering ecosystem that had produced it. The Arrow's cancellation is not nostalgia. It is a case study in what happens when a country in Canada's position defers its most significant defense industrial decisions to the preferences of its larger ally. The CF-105 was, by the technical assessments of its period, an exceptional aircraft. It was canceled not because it failed its performance requirements, but because its continuation conflicted with American defense industrial interests and with the political logic of an alliance in which one member was considerably larger than the other. The engineers who built it dispersed. Many went to NASA. The institutional capacity dissolved. Canada's defense aerospace sector did not recover to anything approaching that capability level in the decades that followed. The Gripen decision is, in this historical framing, not simply a choice between two aircraft. It is a choice about whether the Arrow trajectory continues or whether it is interrupted. Whether Canada remains a country that buys military systems from the country that defines the terms of those systems, or whether it becomes a country that participates in the design, production, and sovereign control of its own defense capabilities. This is where leverage quietly changes hands. The Arctic dimension of this decision cannot be treated as a secondary specification. Canada is not defending the English Channel. It is defending the largest Arctic coastline of any nation on Earth. It is defending airspace over terrain that is, in significant portions, among the most logistically challenging operating environments that military aviation encounters. Dispersed bases, short runways, temperatures that impose maintenance requirements that temperate climate systems are not designed to meet routinely, infrastructure that cannot be assumed and cannot be rapidly constructed when operational necessity requires it. The Gripen was designed with these operating conditions as primary requirements, not as edge cases. Its ability to operate from dispersed locations, from roads used as temporary runways, from forward positions without the extensive ground support infrastructure that more complex platforms require. These are not peripheral features. They are the operational architecture of an aircraft built to function in exactly the conditions that define the geography Canada must defend. The F-35's capabilities are optimized for a different operational environment. High-end networked warfare in contested airspace against peer adversaries, equipped with advanced integrated air defense systems. These are genuine and serious military requirements. They are not, however, the primary operational requirement of an aircraft that must patrol the Northwest Passage, intercept intrusions into Arctic airspace, and maintain a credible presence over terrain where the nearest full-service airbase may be hundreds of kilometers from the point of operation. The performance specifications that matter in those conditions favor a different set of engineering priorities than the specifications that matter over the South China Sea. The Pentagon's response to the Gripen option was not neutral. The communications that passed through diplomatic channels during the evaluation period, the references to operational consequences, the suggestions about what NORAD integration would look like if Canada operated a platform outside the American defense industrial ecosystem, these were not expressions of technical concern. They were expressions of structural preference. The United States has a direct interest in Canada operating American military systems. That interest is partially operational. Interoperability within NORAD has genuine military value, but it is also industrial and strategic. A Canadian procurement of the F-35 is a Canadian commitment to American defense industrial supply chains, American software update authority, American mission system control. That commitment, once made in the form of a decades-long platform adoption, is extremely difficult to reverse. The pressure to make that commitment is itself information. When a country applies diplomatic pressure to influence the defense procurement of an ally, when the pressure references operational consequences rather than simply making the affirmative case for its preferred outcome, the pressure reveals the stakes the applying country perceives in the decision. The United States perceived significant stakes. The stakes were not purely about aircraft performance. This is the moment power stops explaining itself. Canada's position within NORAD creates a specific kind of structural tension that the procurement decision makes visible. NORAD is a genuine military alliance with genuine operational value. The integration of Canadian and American air defense systems has produced a continental defense architecture that serves both countries. But integration, at sufficient depth and sufficient duration, produces dependency. And dependency, when the political environment shifts, as the political environment between the United States and Canada demonstrably shifted in the period under examination, reveals itself as exposure. A Canada that operates F-35s under American software authority, that depends on American update pipelines for mission system currency, that cannot modify the operational parameters of its own air defense aircraft, without American institutional involvement, is a Canada whose air sovereignty is partially administered from outside its own government. This is not a hypothetical condition. It is the operational reality of the platform's architecture as designed and as operated by every other nation that has adopted it. The alliance framing describes it as integration. The sovereignty framing describes it as the practical limit of independent defense decision-making. The Gripen option does not resolve every tension in Canada's defense position. An aircraft with full technology transfer and domestic production capacity still operates within an alliance. It still requires coordination with American systems in NORAD operations. It does not produce overnight defense industrial independence. What it produces is a different balance point between integration and sovereignty, a balance point at which Canada retains meaningful control over the systems its pilots operate and the institutions those systems serve. That balance point matters not because Canada is contemplating military conflict with the United States. It matters because the value of sovereignty is not measured only in adversarial scenarios. It is measured in ordinary ones, in the ability to make decisions without requiring foreign authorization, in the ability to update mission systems on a Canadian timeline in response to Canadian threat assessments, in the ability to say, with precision, that the aircraft protecting Canadian airspace is operating under Canadian command in a complete and unqualified sense. The Avro Arrow was cancelled 66 years ago. The engineers left. The tooling was destroyed. The institutional capacity dissolved in a decision that took less time to make than the CF-18 replacement process has taken to advance. What disappeared with it was not just an aircraft. It was a demonstration that Canada could design and build at the frontier of military aviation technology. That demonstration, once withdrawn, has not been repeated. The Gripen decision is not the Arrow. No single procurement decision recovers 6 decades of foregone industrial development, but it is a decision about the direction of the next 6 decades. About whether Canada's defense industrial trajectory continues toward deeper integration with American systems and American control, or whether it begins the longer work of recovering a kind of institutional capacity that was lost in a political moment, and that has not been seriously attempted since. By the time that decision is fully made and its consequences are visible in the operational capabilities and the industrial landscape that result from it, the window in which it could have been made differently will have closed. Defense platform decisions are generational. They are not quarterly. The aircraft chosen today will be operating in some form when the strategic environment of the 2050s arrives. That environment is not yet known. The dependencies established now will be carried into it. History does not offer the option of making the consequential decision again once its consequences are clear. It only offers the decision at the moment it exists before the window closes.